One area of law we both do a lot of work on is people remarry and they might start a second family. What should people be thinking about in those situations from your point of view?
So if they are going into a second marriage, you think, well, if something happens to them, what would they like to happen to their assets? So if, for example, that's where things like prenuptial agreements come in place, because if they've got assets they're bringing into the marriage, and if the intention is something happens to them, they'd like it to pass on to their children from their first marriage, that's the important part of what a prenuptial agreement would do, in accordance with a will as well. Because what the prenuptial agreement does is it means the assets stay with them and stay as part of their estate. And then I guess where we work well together would be that your wills would then look at where the assets go and where the estate goes thereafter.
Yeah. We often, I think I said before, set up life interest trusts often for families on second marriages to make sure that the new spouse is looked after if they pass away, but when that new spouse dies or remarries or cohabits, whatever they want to use as a trigger event, so to speak, it then ends up going to their children from the first marriage. And it's really important to do that. And also, you know, not many people know marriage cancels a will. So sometimes they've made a will, they've remarried, and they think, well, my existing will has my children in it, so it's absolutely fine. It's not fine. You've cancelled the will, and then the intestacy rules come in. But you know, it's really important to make sure you make a new will. You can add provision in there to say what we call an in expectation of marriage clause. So you can say, if we do marry, I don't want this will to be cancelled. But so many people, when I tell that to clients, that's one of the first things they say. I didn't realise marriage cancels a will.
No, I hadn't thought about it until you'd said, actually. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah. It's one of those things that you said people don't think about. You just go, well, I've made a will, that will do me for life, and that's it.
One thing I know you've told people misunderstand is the legal rights of couples if they decide to live together. But I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions actually in family law, that they live together. We've been together 25 years. We're almost like we're married.
Yeah, a common law spouse effectively doesn't exist. It isn't recognised in English law. You know, there are campaigns for change, and people are saying to the government, you need to look at the law of cohabitation. I think there's about 3.6 million cohabiting couples in the UK. So actually, there are 3.6 million couples that potentially don't know what their rights are when it comes to it. So the default position is if a property is in one person's name, they own all of the equity. Likewise, if the property is in both parties' names, the default position and presumption is that they own it equally. And I think that people kind of go into the conception of, well, actually, I had this house, I put this deposit in, and you've moved in with me. But obviously, if it doesn't work out, we'll just agree that I'll get my money back. Well, actually, unfortunately, sometimes separations are quite bitter. And you may find that one party will go, well, actually, why am I going to agree that you get your money back? And the law will be on their side, effectively, to say, well, if it's in joint names, it's owned jointly. And there isn't any time bar. So whether you've moved in with someone and lived together for 2 weeks or 22 years, you're in the same position. And they can look at, after a prolonged period of time, it's 22 years, and you can look at sort of the fact that they've made more investments, more contributions towards the property. It might be easier to establish a claim and an interest in the property. But it turns into a very expensive and very emotional process.
Yeah, I can imagine. Again, it's hoping for the best and planning for the worst. If you put something in place, hopefully you're never going to use it or need it. But if you do need it, at least it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.